Are you seeking a better way to accelerate your sales, to scale your business, to live a life with no limits? Accelerate Sales Podcast features global experts who have cracked the code to recurring revenues with proven sales systems and get you on the fast track to scaling. Now let's accelerate your sales with today's episode.
Hello to the Accelerate Sales Solo Podcast, episode number 400. That's right, 400. I will take you on a short, and I mean a really short journey of getting to 400, and most importantly, what is in store for you next. If it's your first time, welcome. You've missed 399 shows, but that's okay. You can always go back and listen to the catalog. But if you love what you hear, please subscribe. If you're a regular, thanks for your support. Appreciate every review that I get. And I know that there's some people that have listened to all 400, and it's not just me. And I want to give a bit of a shout out to people that have really given me some great feedback on how to improve the podcast along the journey. Tim McCann, Rick Merton, Brian Donovan, and Linda Petroni. They've given me feedback. It's not always feedback I needed at the time, but it's definitely feedback that has helped the podcast become 400 shows strong. I never thought that was going to happen. And please check out past shows on your favorite platform. Just search Accelerate Sales, and don't forget those interview shows as well. And if you're a cloud consultant looking for a safe place to ask questions to help you scale, why not check out the Cloud Consultants Collective? It's got multiple consultants across multiple platforms, including Salesforce, HubSpot, ClickUp, Zoho, Google, Microsoft, just to name a few. If you want to learn from peers to scale your business faster, this may be for you. Just go to cloudconsultantscollective.com to join for free today. So I'd like to also thank a few key sponsors that have helped get to 400. One is LeadJet, and that is where you can sync your LinkedIn data with CRM. It works beautifully. Book Like a Boss, which is my preferred and only scheduling platform that I use. Trigger, without the E, so TRIGGR. It allows you to get triggers of information to help you progress sales. It's really cool and progressive. There's Hyperize with gifts to get more replies, and we've been using on LinkedIn Outreach. It works beautifully. And if you haven't had my little Connect 4 one as yet, a little GIF, just reach out to me and I'm happy to share that with you. SendSpark, videos in the sales funnel, great analytics, and you can get all of these and the links to some of the discounts that are provided at paulhigginsmentoring.com/resources. So in episode 300, I did a summary of my path to get to 300. And I'll just quickly go through the top lines on this. First was why I got into podcasting, and my answer is probably going to surprise you. So go have a listen to 300. It's nice, short, and sweet. The next is around how I met two people that really catapulted me into podcasting. It was always an idea, but this took it over the edge, and that was John Lee Demas and Kate Erickson. I know they've recently got married. I don't know if, Kate, you're now Lee Demas, but anyway, a shout out to both of you. They're from Entrepreneur on Fire, and that was a podcast that I listened to all the time. And pardon the pun, he really fired me up to go and launch my own. I just saw the success they'd created. We were at an event in Brisbane, Australia, which they came all the way down to, and I was just fully inspired. So then I went and launched it. So it was on the 5th of May 2017 that it was launched, called the Corporate Escapees Podcast. And really, back then, I wanted to help people just like me, right? So I'd left corporate in 2011 and had gone through a roller coaster journey. I'd worked as a coach, then did some advising for small business, then set up my own two businesses. So by 2011, I had lots of experience, and I thought, okay, that's who I want to help. But the more that I, focused on corporate escapees, it sort of reminded me, well, actually, that was a long time ago, Paul, and maybe it's time to move on and have something different. So then I named the podcast Build, Live, Give, and you can go and hear that. And that was really about building a great business, living a good life so you can give back. And that was the name, but it was a little bit too generic. And I'll tell you when I changed it in a moment, but I went through a little bit of a health crisis, you could say. I had major surgery in 2018 in November and nearly lost my life. So that was not the experience I'd ever want to go through again, but it did remind me that, having that, going through dialysis thereafter, and having a transplant from my best friend Brendan, who I'm sure you've heard if you're a regular, the one thing I never did was miss a show. I always put a show out. I know we had a little break through Christmas sometimes, but basically I made sure that I always delivered it because I'm so passionate about this. I love doing it. And, it shows when you're really, really ill and, at points I couldn't even get out of bed and I was still doing my podcast. It's a pretty good indication that you love it. And then when was it? July? Yeah, July 21. If you're listening to this whenever, it was July 21, episode 318, I actually decided to rebrand it, called it Accelerate Sales. And, I really thought, well, that was the major thing that both I've had the experience. I'm working for Coca-Cola for 18 years, so that certainly helped, and mainly in sales roles, even though I ended up as a director and a general manager, you got to sell, right? And then the other thing is I really wanted to target consultants because I felt that was who I enjoyed working with the most. And, of late, if you're a regular, you would have heard that I've been talking about cloud consultants more. So I've decided to niche down even further from consultants into cloud consultants. And it's still all B2B, right? So, I'm going to be keeping my brand as Accelerate Sales, the podcast. And what I'll be doing, and you'll notice, is just leaning more towards cloud consultants. So what does a cloud consultant really mean? Well, it's just anyone that's consulting on implementing technology. And, typically they might be just doing consulting independently. They might be selling and also implementing normally, and when I say technology, it's SaaS platforms, right? I mentioned some of them before, but that's the key things that I help people do because that's what I did, right? We sort of sold our business in 2019, but we built it from 2015 to then, and we sold it to a Google partner. And really what I'm doing now is just giving back to those that I love. So if you're not a cloud consultant, like I said, it's still B2B sales. This should be, most of the sales funnel is exactly the same. You'll just start to see more of a nuance where I do go more towards cloud consultants. And I want to thank a few people, right? Because this show doesn't happen by itself. And it certainly, sometimes the interviews and the podcast is the easiest part, right? I've got it's all the other stuff that comes through it with the show notes, which are just fantastic on the website. If you haven't had a chance to check them out, go to paulligginsmentoring.com/podcast. You'll see those. So we've done a really good job in upping the ante there. But then there's, so many other things, social media, all the assets we give our guests. There's a lot. And I'd really like to call out two key people for this. So one is Chi and the other one is Diana. So Chi does all the booking, she does all the coordination, she does all the process change around the podcast. So certainly when we swapped to Accelerate Sales, she was, single-handedly responsible for doing that. And then Diana is the one that writes all the show notes and does all of that side of it and does the LinkedIn posts as well. And that just, takes a lot of heavy lifting off me because, to be honest, I used to love the interviews and doing the solos, but then turning that into content, it's something I like to do, but it's something I didn't love to do. Also, I'd like to thank Balaez. So he's been editing the podcast from day one. He came from a referral from Nathan Chan from Founder without the E. And Nathan's been fantastic to me in the community. And I'd also just like to mention a couple of other mentors. So one is James Schramko. He's just rebranded his podcast to James Schramko, but it used to be called Superfast Business. He was great. Michael Greenberg, who's a sort of guy behind podcasting. He sort of works at a really high level, but gave me really good insight into the industry and cut my podcast down. There was a lot of, I think, unnecessary information. It was going too long, so he's really helped sharpen that. Michael O'Neill, who from the Solopreneur Hour. So, me listening to his podcast, but he also gave me some great advice when he came and stayed here in Melbourne. Charlie Valla and Valla Media, from Valla Media. He has been great. He's also been great for forcing me into video, right? And I knew I had to do it, but just him giving me the equipment and doing all of that was great. There was Doug Sandler from Nice Guys. That was great. There was Jamie Masters from Eventual Millionaire. And she's, like James both, she was a mentor to me, but also I learnt from her own podcast listening to it. And finally, Melanie Benson, who did the last tweak to launch Accelerate Sales. She's from Amplify Your Success. And I'd also love to thank all my clients for giving the inspiration and the ideas. So, what you hear from me are practical examples of what I face every day with cloud consultants, and I'll continue to do that. And finally, you, the listeners, right? I thanked a few listeners before that had given me feedback, but I know that there's more of you that have, and once again, call me out if I've missed you. But the feedback is incredible, and just keep it coming, right? Sometimes doing these podcasts can be a little bit lonely, and I know you're busy in your life. I do the same thing. I think because I'm a podcaster, I do reach out to the ones that I listen to and give them, feedback, what I really liked, things that I think they could improve on, the audio quality, etc. sometimes, and also topics I'd love to hear. But not everyone does that, and if you are one of those people, I really appreciate it. And you can get all the links in the show notes at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast, episode 400 on the app that you're listening. And I know this one's a little different. It's a little more philosophical, looking back, a little bit forward. But I can assure you that we're going to have some cracking content coming up soon. I'm just going to continue to lift the bar. You can follow me on LinkedIn where you can see the podcasts as well. We post those twice a week. If you know someone interested in accelerating their sales, please share it with them, and they will think you're a rock star, and thank you for that, I promise. And if you're a cloud consultant or you know one, just get them to go to cloudconsultantscollective.com to join that amazing free Slack community. The last thing, and the thing that I'll probably say until the last episode, please take action to accelerate your sales.
I'm fired up after today's episode. What about you? But hey, before you go, learning is just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to put today's strategy into action. Head over now to today's show page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast and share how you'll put it into action. Be sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Tell me what your favorite episode is. And don't wait 1 minute more to gain access to your pulse check at paulhigginsmentoring.com. This could be the difference between struggling to get more leads and making this next quarter your best one yet.